Hey everybody, I got a new view today above the bench. So welcome to the bench. A couple exciting tips I want to share. First, for all of you new age fans that happen to have a yoga mat, this is actually the perfect thing to have on your bench if you're working on guitars. Roll up a yoga mat. You can get them on clearance for like $5. Holds the neck of the guitar, plop it on down, namaste. Also, this is something I picked up on Amazon. It's just a multimeter. And I'm really excited to have started to read the resistance levels on pickups to see how pickups are functioning. A whole load of things I can troubleshoot and diagnose. So I'll share with you some of those findings. Another cool trick I learned from the Trogly guitar channel, which I've been checking out, which I think is super cool, is using steel wool to polish frets to make them look like new. I did that on a Strat. I'll share some footage, but I did that on a Strat, which I already sold. I sold it in one day. It was fantastic. But to me, take a little steel wool, and then what I was doing is I was taking painter's tape. I was putting painter's tape on either side of the fret, and then putting a little, if it's heavily corroded fret, using PB Blaster. Otherwise, my default has been WD-40. And I put just a little bit on the steel wool, and once I've protected the fretboard with painter's tape, you can just take this and lightly bring that fret back to life, and I think it works really great. Some cool tips I've learned, and each time I do a new guitar and make a new video, I'm learning new things, and that's its own reward, right? So pretty cool. All right, let's see what I bought in and what's coming on in the bench today, huh? Brought this case along with me. It's just a typical Dreadnought acoustic case, but what's in it is what's exciting. So let me clean up this bench a little bit. Oh, look at this. My dad's locked down and decided to become a manufacturer of face masks. We learned how to use a sewing machine. This is my new mask, custom made by my dad, so thanks, Dad. Watching out for the fam. But I'm in my own basement. I'm not grocery shopping right now. Alright, my bench is cleaned up. So here's the deal. This was a reverb purchase. What do you think's in here? If you tap it, it appears. It's magic. Oh man. This is vintage. Vintage day on Plane Trade. What I have here is a 1967 Gretsch 6104 Rally Green. Unbelievably cool and very light. I actually had a 6120 Chet Atkins Nashville in orange, which was super cool, but I don't know, this is better to me. I like, so far, I like the shape better. I like the actual F-holes. My 6120 in orange had fake F-holes which are painted on, which I think was really goofy, and it had this big crazy leather pad on the back. This I think is just a little more down to earth in terms of, being more comparable, like a 335 body and style. So this is the first I've taken out of the case. I've been quarantining guitars that I buy in for 3 days just to account for the coronavirus kill-off. 3 days to kill the coronavirus off. You're seeing this the first time just like I am. This is so cool. Alright, so here it is. You're getting the first look right alongside me. So I drove down to Chicago to pick this up, and the guy was following all social distance guidelines. He basically had me call him when I got to his house and said, hey, the guitar's outside my door, and I walked up and put on a pair of latex gloves, picked it up, put it in that case, drove it home, let it sit in the case for 3 days, and never saw the guy face to face, but bought it on Reverb and did a local pickup in Chicago. So this is pretty amazing. He was selling it as what he called a player's grade, vintage in fair condition, but to me, what makes it special, even though you are having the typical binding issues that you see on older Gretsches where the binding deteriorates, that was one thing he cited as an issue, which the binding is rough, the binding is falling apart, it's not a deal breaker to me, and the price was right. But the main thing, if they call it a player grade, I'm always thinking, what did they modify? What did they get rid of? And what I was so excited about is that it did have the original pickups. It has the original Bigsby, which you can see is just nicely worn and just so cool. The original paint job, so no refinish. I love that Rally Green. All the original electronics. The only thing that is disengaged on this guitar is, I guess there's a treble boost circuit, which is currently bypassed, so it doesn't work. So in terms of tones, we're going to be dealing with volume and tone controls. Typically, you're going to have some kind of tone switch up here that changes the tone circuit, the pickup configuration. So we'll delve into what all these switches do. We'll get into all that for sure. But just taking an initial look at this guitar, I love when a guitar looks like its age. I love when a guitar from 1967 looks like it is 53 years old. And this one does. You can see the binding. See this cool rally cover for this model, original Gretsch. So Gretsch was sold to Baldwin in 1966. This is in 1967, but they hadn't yet moved their manufacturing from New York to Arkansas, which is where they eventually moved all the production. And then there were some major quality issues cited, and people say that it just went downhill. But to me, it's kind of like buying a 65 Fender right after the CBS acquisition. You know, snobs say, oh, you want pre-CBS, but if you go right after the acquisition date, nobody has changed the production processes that much at that point. And in my opinion, if you can get a Gretsch, a 67, you're gonna typically pay less than a pre-Baldwin acquisition. But if you buy it for early enough in 67, it's not like they changed much yet. They didn't move it to Arkansas for production or anything yet. Made in USA was added after the Baldwin, so that's always a giveaway that it's a post-Baldwin acquisition guitar. These tuners are probably not original, and the reason for that is you can see that there are original holes there. So these tuners are probably not original. So still, to me, if you're gonna call it player's grade because of quality or because of, you know, you call it fair quality, I get it that the binding is in rough shape, which is typical for a lot of Gretsches at this age, and I get it, you know, and this is also a replacement pickguard. So this is just, but very well done, just a plastic replacement pickguard that's pretty sharp. Actually, I kind of like the black see-through look. But to me, the whole key here, if I'm gonna buy an old Gretsch, I want the electronics, I want the original Gretsch pickups. That is the key. I love the Bigsby being original because it's usually the sweet worn look on that Bigsby plate, just like my other Gretsch I owned, which was a 1966 6120 Chet Atkins. And you know, everything else on this guitar, I like the side inlays. I think those are cool. You know, you can see some pretty rough binding over here. If I can swing around, I mean, you can see it's deteriorating. So, you know, it's going to continue to go. But this guitar is totally playable. I mean, there's not any reason why the deteriorating binding is going to be a problem. And to me, the coolest thing you get out of a Gretsch is it's so, the way it's voiced, pickup-wise, it's like it sings, especially in the lower register. So I find myself when I play a Gretsch, I usually am playing almost like surf style, where you're doing a lot of melodies down here, you know, between the first and say fifth position, and you're taking advantage of the Bigsby to just make that thing sing. And I think that is kind of the key. But yeah, I mean, how cool is this, right? Vintage Gretsch. I love it. All right, so my game plan on this is interesting because the strings look like they're pretty much brand new. It looks like he replaced them. The nut looks good. So old Gretsches always have a 0 fret. So the 0 fret is this fret right here. And the nut is intact. So that's always a good sign. My other Gretsch actually had a broken nut and it still was fine, but this one is in better shape than my other one. It's got what the seller called a stable crack in the headstock, if you can see that. I mean, it does have a crack in the headstock, but not, you know, not back of the headstock kind of thing where you're worried about the thing falling apart on you. This is not a crack. It looks like that, but it's actually more of just a gouge in the paint. So I'm gonna take off these screws and see what this is. This is clearly a replacement plate, but I just want to know what's under there. A super, super cool guitar. And already, actually, the action is set up pretty well to my liking. Not too high, not too low. Especially on a guitar like this, you want to have enough action space to really let it reverberate and sing. All right, so the next thing I want to do, I'm going to give some close-up shots of just some of the mechanical inner workings of the guitar. And then I'm going to flip it over, take that back plate off. But there's not much to do to this guitar other than plug it in and start playing it. So tech-wise, I can tell these are practically brand new strings. See how they sound. I'll probably, when I did my other Gretsch, I had flat wounds, just because I like the way it sounded. I'll probably put flat wounds on this guitar, but I'll see how it sounds first, just with, these look like brand new strings. Should be good. I'm gonna give you a real close-up look at some of these components because they just mechanically look beautiful. I love the look of some of these mechanisms. They just look like little pieces of works of art. I mean, the Bigsby bridge, look at the machining, the components on this. I love how it's machined in such a way that it has a natural stop to the action, right? I mean, you can bring it up and it kind of bumps into that machined piece there. I love the way they etched Gretsch, acid etched, I'm assuming, into this metal here. And then look at the roller bridge. I mean, it's just cool. So you got a piece of wood, like a floating bridge that you'd see on like an arch top or something. Then you got these beautiful mechanisms here, rollers for the strings. You got the stylings of the original pickups here. You got creative uses of switches, control knobs. We'll get to all these. We'll dissect what they do. You got a rosewood fretboard, cool inlays. They have a combination of dot inlays at the 17th, what is it, 12th? No, 15, 17, 19. And then beginning at the 12th fret on down, these half moon inlays on the side, which are super cool. A 0 fret, which I think is a cool feature. Cool truss rod cover. It's almost like a military emblem or something. I think that's kind of what they were going for. And then that beautiful Gretsch logo on the headstock. Hey, you see how this yoga mat works though? Isn't that cool? So this is a multi-tool. It's got Fender and Gibson size wrenches, but here's a little just flathead screwdriver that's included on here, which is pretty cool. Alright, so let me give you a view of what we're looking at here. Alright, let me shine a little light down in here. You just see that this is basically the access for, just an access cavity to get at everything. Kind of convenient. Oh yeah, that was exciting, right? Let's put that back. Interesting, so the actual original screws the heads must have broken off because they're still stuck in the body, and then obviously this was a replacement piece that was made, and they just drilled new holes right next to them, small little holes next to the original pieces of screw that are still stuck in there. Alright, $10 as I drop these screws because these are hard to work with, they're really small. Gosh, it's actually easier to just use my thumb. They're so awkward, they're so small. Yeah, when I'm working with a vintage guitar though, I like a guitar to look its age. I think that to me is exciting. I don't want one that's, I mean, I get that collectors want the mint condition ones that, you know, were found in some closet somewhere, but to me, I want one that look like they're beat to hell and they've been played for 50 years. That to me is exciting. And those tell a story. And when they tell a story, I want to play them. And usually when you play them, you can feel the stories in them. You don't even need to know the stories, you feel it when you play. That's just something you sense. And I think that's super cool. Yeah, so I mean, you can see how deteriorated the binding is, but this is very typical of Gretsch's from these of this age. You can see it's starting to fall apart. I don't have a whole bunch I want to do other than play it, so let's do that. Hold on, before I do that, let me show you this cool electronics business. See, I'm getting more sophisticated as we go. Check it out, you can read these pickups. How do you read the pickups of your guitar using a multimeter? Segment begin. This is a multimeter. I didn't know what it was till I watched a Seymour Duncan video and read the instructions. I'm not an electrician. I don't understand a lot about electronics. I'm a guitar player who's trying to do what he can tech-wise to take care of these guitars and make sure they come in and get cleaned up and get sent out proper order. And I never like to get in over my head, but I figured how hard can this be? And when I see people testing the readings of pickups, I figured I could do that. And yeah, it's really easy. All you gotta do is plug a cable into the input jack of your guitar, like you were gonna send it to an amp, but instead of sending it to an amp, we're gonna use this multimeter, the ohm resistance setting, in my case, and here's what's going to happen. With the volume and tone all the way up, touch the red to the tip of the guitar cable, and I'm going to touch the black to the bass, getting a reading of 2.2. So this is, at least we figured out, this is a kill switch. I need it on in the middle position to get a reading. I'm reading 2.2 in this setting. Let me put all the switches in the same way, see if I get the same readings. 2.2. In the middle, 1.3. So I think this is the tone circuit. I think this is the pickup selector. So I have it all the way this way. I'm getting a reading of 2.2. In the middle, getting a reading of 1.3. And on the far side, getting a reading of 3.1. Let's plug it in. All right, here comes the trusty old Mesa F50, 50 watt 112 combo. That is my go-to amp for everything. I love it. It's a discontinued F series from early 2000s. So we're gonna find out together if this thing works, because like I said, I bought it without playing it. So let's find out together, huh? All right, cool. Can you see me like that? Yeah, I guess so, right? Good resonant body though, I already like it. Let's figure out what these switches do first. All right. So on the right horn, we have master volume. Okay, this is the pickup selector. Up position is the neck. Middle is both. And then, yep, the all the way forward. So this is probably a tone circuit. Down here is just a kill switch. Either far direction is off, middle is just on. There's a treble circuit that's disengaged. No crackling or anything in the pouts, that's great. So very low output from the pickups, which my readings indicated low resistance, like readings of like 2, which is a little bit worrisome. Let's see what happens if we push the volume on the amp a bit, but right now, I mean, if I had plugged in a different guitar at this amp setting, it would be blasting us. We're gonna give this a go with some gain. I think the trick to this guitar is to put a little gain in it. Alright, so the verdict is that these vintage low output Gretsch pickups do sound great when you put them through some drive and you crank the amp. You gotta push the guitar because it's just super low output. So I'm gonna look in to see if that's normal for this guitar. I was getting readings of 2.2 from the pickups, which seems very, very low. So I'm gonna do some research and see if that's normal. If it is, then the solution to get a great tone out of this guitar is just to put it through an overdrive pedal or something that's gonna crank it up, in my opinion. Other than that, it's just a low output guitar. It's a vintage guitar. It's cool. Thanks for watching this, and stay tuned for more.